To take it one layer deeper on this, and the reason I like this book so much, again, The Case Against Reality. So he's making the case that space and time are not fundamental.
Yes.
Which I started my intellectual explorations in physics, actually, astrophysics. So for the longest time, even the way I describe money as I talk about space and time, so that blew my mind. But this dovetailed nicely with another book called Leela. The author is Robert Pirsig. So he wrote Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which is a very popular book. 20 years later, he wrote Leela, which no one's heard of, which is crazy. And he basically says he was wrong about his first book. And he lays out this entire other metaphysics of quality, he calls it. So it's the metaphysics, I think it's the metaphysics of quality. But his supposition is that it's not physical reality that's fundamental. It's not information that's fundamental. It's value. So he actually, and it's a beautiful book. I highly recommend it. He essentially is refuting causality itself. We think A causes B. This book makes the case that B values precondition A, so that we are actually creating our future through our value systems. And this goes back to something, I think Solzhenitsyn said this, that the line between good and evil runs down the heart of every man. So it's as if our moral decisions are actually what's creating the outcomes in reality over time. And then that gets into all the wisdom traditions related to religion, where it's always talking about, loving thy neighbor and loving God and all of these other things that are good morally to create the best outcomes.
So values are fundamental.
Value, yes.
Value
Yeah.
is fundamental. Oh boy, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it does feel like physics is not capturing something.
Mm-hmm.
There's some people, panpsychists, argue that consciousness might be one of the fundamental properties of nature, like from which emerges everything we see. So that could be just other words for this same notion of value. And then the basic laws of physics are not capturing that currently.
Yeah.
So maybe humans, in order to understand from where humans came from, we have to understand these other properties of nature which are yet to be discovered,
right,
at the physics level.
And we contend with that underlying nature, whatever it is, with the logos, right? So we're looking at uncategorized nature, and then we're assigning a word to it. So we're slicing up chaos into little boxes of order, and then we're establishing this social consensus as to those labels, which we'd call words, and we're using that to communicate. And when we communicate, we can start to build these other things. This is like the Yuval Harari imagined orders. So we can create these useful fictions, right? Whether it's the nation state or human rights or money. And that allows us to cooperate flexibly in large numbers so that we can better contend with reality. We can produce more complicated things. We can enlarge that bubble of civilization against entropy. And that's what capitalism is all about. It's about further specializing knowledge, further enriching mankind's treasury of knowledge, and doing it. But to do that, the communication media that we're using, the words have to have stable meaning. The money needs to have value that's dependable, right? It needs to be something it's not dictated by any one group. It's reached by consensus of the entire group. That's how. So you could think it's like optimizing for error correction again, where a free market would be harnessing the intelligence of all market actors, and a central planning or a centrally planned market would be harnessing just the intelligence of a small group of bureaucrats.
And it's not obvious how to achieve this kind of consensus mechanism. I mean, there's obviously, we'll talk about sort of Bitcoin as an idea. Ultimately, the idea of Bitcoin is connecting it to physics. So like you can trust that physical matter won't change. Mm-hmm. But, there could be other ideas that were yet, maybe physics could be changed. if Eric Weinstein has anything to say about it. Like it's on, we right now believe that physics can't be changed, the physical matter of the world, but maybe it can in a way that we're totally not understanding. You mentioned sort of reality from Donald Hoffman's perspective. Like if we don't have even close to direct access to the fabric of reality, maybe we're living in a world that's very like many dimensions, that the notions of space and time is just like a silly, useful construct that's not at all connected. You're starting to look at like Stephen Wolfram's, I don't know if you're familiar with his view of the world, that it's like hypergraphs underneath it all, like these mathematical structures from which everything emerges. Like they're like many, many, many orders of magnitude smaller than what we think of, as they're even smaller than like strings in string theory. So like those are the basic mathematical objects from which it emerges. I think that's an interesting philosophical framework. It's also, people should check out a cool way to play with beautiful hypergraph mathematical structures. So he has, I don't know if you know who Stephen Wolfram is, but he created Wolfram Alpha and all these tools that you can actually visualize and play with. So you can play with physics in a visual way, which or at least discrete mathematics, which I think is incredible. He doesn't get enough love. One of the reasons I think doesn't get enough love is because of this little quirk of human nature, which is the ego. And he sometimes frustrates a few folks because he's very, let's say, proud of his work.
I guess.